Okay. Well, welcome everyone. It's Thursday, so it's Thankfulness Thursday. Um, and start a gratitude session here shortly. Um, yeah, in my experience, oftentimes I know, especially when I'm in in a grind of sorts, meaning where I just feel like there's emotional and mood related stuff that's eating at me. Uh, I can either engage in it directly and do some of what we did yesterday with the rain exercise, right? So we engage in that challenging stuff directly by posing questions, sort of seeking for the veracity of is it really true, and then really just trying to practice some direct self compassion. And another way of addressing that kind of down regulated mood is to do something different. It's just to divert the attention to something like gratitude. So this meditation that I try to do at least once a month, certainly here with all of us, is what I call gratitude for the basics. And the idea is pretty simple. There are so many things in our day-to-day life that are kind of invisible to us, meaning we take them for granted. And they have to do with the somewhat, unglamorous mechanics or workings of things like, the fact that on Mondays here in Fairfax, the garbage trucks show up and there are people that are up at 5 in the morning and they just magically take this garbage away, because if they didn't, it'd be a disaster at the house, right? We'd have just bags of dirty, rotten stuff laying around. And yet here are these people that show up, they have a schedule, and they take the garbage somewhere. Presumably, I'm making the assumption that it's all above board and they're doing appropriate things with the garbage, but there's lots of things like that. And so the idea is to just take a step back and see if we can use our attention skills and just focus on, for a few minutes today, this idea of gratitude for the basics. So let's start by closing our eyes. And let's start with gratitude for the simplicity of sitting in a chair. Maybe you're laying on a bed. Just noticing the simplicity of the moment, just sitting, breathing. We got a few minutes together. There's nowhere else to be. There's nothing to do. And maybe that reality activates a sense of gratitude, feeling thankful for just a few minutes of silence and positivity. And yesterday we practiced with each in breath, take the world in. Imagine metaphorically and physically, you're inhaling what is around you. And then on the exhale, letting go, letting things be, passing them back. And then let's shift our attentional focus to safety. So appreciating that right here, right now, in order to be on this call, we're safe. We're somewhere where we can sit together and take the time to do this practice. And again, that's not a given. There are so many humans on planet Earth in this moment right now that don't share that foundational sense of safety, let alone the ability to do what we're doing together right now. the war, the violence. Just taking that in for a moment. There's a sense of physical safety, and hopefully there's also a strong sense of psychological safety on this call. We're obviously all wanting to do this together, in part because there's a kinship about us meeting up at noon, feeling safe with one another to practice. So appreciating that. And the next thing to focus on is what I would call the functionings of a society. So for better or for worse, I know our society isn't perfect. There's lots of room for improvement. But for the most part, we know that if we pick up the phone and dial 911, someone will answer. If our house is burning, there's a good chance that at some point, sooner rather than later, fire engines and fire people will show up to support us. And this is all out there. It's all happening. It's part of what enables us to go to bed at night. Again, for the most part, not fear that someone's going to break in or harm us. And this ties into this sense of basic infrastructure. I complain a lot about the roads in Northern California and how beat up they are, especially when you compare them to other parts of the country or Europe or elsewhere. And we actually have roads. We have stop signs. And someone is responsible for making those signs and putting them there and making sure they're visible and maintained, or traffic lights. The other week, the power was shut down and the water was turned off for a while. And suddenly everything changes. There's this like, oh, that has a big impact on my ability to clean myself or do my dishes, or worried that the power being out means that the food in my refrigerator is going to spoil. So there's so many things like that that we just take for granted. We assume that they're just going to be there. The invitation is to appreciate all that goes into making all of that work. Next, moving on to communal spaces, parks or playgrounds. Or here where I live, there's a fair amount of open space. I think it's managed by the Park Service. It's Again, it's just there. There are roads that lead up to it. There are garbage cans where I can put my gum wrapper. Just so much that goes into making sure that these communal spaces are safe and maintained and available. And again, none of that happens by accident. Another big one for me is access to food. When I was a wilderness guide and I'd be gone for weeks, sometimes months at a time, I remember feeling this overwhelm of walking into a grocery store and looking at the aisles and aisles of different kinds of foods, or even choices of different, be they cereals or fruit, or why do we need 12 different kinds of butter? But yet there it was. And so Again, for the most part, we live in a part of the world and a time in history where this is all available to us. And again, it's no accident. For the most part, relying that when we go to a restaurant and we eat their food, that we're not going to get sick. That's not an accident, because there are people who spend their time making sure that there are standards and that they're followed. And then there's waste and garbage, as I mentioned earlier. Unfortunately, we produce a fair amount of stuff that we ultimately don't want in our homes. It- food waste, or just plastics and packaging, and all of that needs to go somewhere so that it's not cluttering our backyards or our streets. And again, there's a whole army of people and institutions that just focus on this nonstop so that we can trust that on Monday mornings the garbage truck comes by and takes the garbage away, or that the garbage bins in the park or on the streets are emptied on a regular basis. How different our life would be if that was not the case. And then lastly, there's this sense of convenience, or an appreciation for the convenience of the world that we live in now, be it technology, for the most part, trusting that if I turn my phone on and there'll be Wi-Fi, or my phone will work in most places, even if I'm not close to my home. And then I can use that phone and find a restaurant or a place where I want to order some food from. And I can actually call them and they'll go ahead and prepare the food so I can just pick it up. In some cases, they'll even deliver it to my door. And it's just not that big of a deal anymore. It's pretty normal. We live in an incredibly convenience oriented society. And sure, some of it's not as clean or as well run as we would like it to be on an ethical basis, but nonetheless, just taking a moment to appreciate how much convenience we get to benefit from, and that most people on planet Earth don't have nearly as much access to this kind of convenience. And then take a deep breath in. Again, letting it all out, just letting it be. Hold your out breath for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Another deep in breath. Long exhale. And hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And open your eyes. Come on back to the session. We're out of time. It's 12:15. Uh, Hope that was a good reminder, a quick break just to drop into opening your eyes to all the stuff that's going on beneath the surface, and to remember that that is worthy of a moment of attention and appreciation. So hope that was helpful. I'll stick around for a few more minutes if you want to chat. I'm here.